Welcome to a Leader's Journey podcast. I'm your host, Joel Gunn. Excited to have Sergio Luna back with me. Sergio and I have been friends for almost a decade now, and he is a genius at what he does. We're going to talk about that more in a minute. But Sergio, welcome back to the podcast. You were with us a little over a year ago,
Thank you.
maybe two even. So good to have you back.
Thank you so much. A pleasure to be here.
So just before we went on the air, we were talking about the three biggest lies in branding. And why don't you unpack that for the audience?
Well, I mean, there are many lies, to be honest, that I hit frequently, but there are some that are more they repeat more often. So I think it's important for people to understand and to see what, we, of course, we want to be truthful, we want to be impactful, and just here to talk a little bit about that.
So what would you say the biggest lie is in branding?
Man, even though um I put the three in the same bucket, to be
Okay.
honest. Like a mix, right? And one important thing, and I think this is one of the biggest things for me. I hear this super often. People think with all their heart that branding happens in a very specific time when people turn it on or turn it off. I think for me that's one of the biggest lies, right? Because they always say things like, you know what, I'm gonna start my branding, in a year or in 6 months or in 2 years. That's one of the biggest lies because branding is all about reputation. It's the reputation that your company, that you that you have in the marketplace. And that's happening every single day. And by the way, it's happening, it doesn't matter of your logo, your website. No, no, no. It's happening across the quality of your service. It happens across how you manage the teams, your culture, your values, how you live the company, right? Some company I've experienced in our 25 years, there are some companies that have horrible logo designs, but their service is quite impressive, right? The culture is very vibrant, everything's really good, and they have okay reputation. Yes, there are things to be fixed, right? But the reputation is good because it's an overall package. So that's an important mix. So when you realize, I think so, there are champions in the industry that when they realize that reputation branding is happening on a daily basis, then they say, wow, this car is going and it's going fast. Grab the wheel and shift the gears because if not, I'm going to crash. So those are the best players because they manage their branding, their reputation, their brands really, really well. So that's one of the first ones.
You say, I love that example you gave where the company doesn't have the best logo ever, but yet they've got a great brand, and
Yep.
they've got a good reputation, they've got a good culture. They have all the things that companies aspire for. Just their logo, what we would normally think of as a brand, doesn't look that great. But the real brand is their reputation in the industry, the customer service, the quality, the way they take care of their people. And I think you're right. I think a lot of people believe that, well, I've got a great brand because I got a really cool logo. And you're saying
Correct.
it's way more than that.
Correct. So, and yes, correct. Now, if you allow me, I'm gonna jump into the next one. And but a lot of people, well, this is a kind of interesting lie where they express something like, you know what, my faith doesn't belong with my brand. It's too personal. My faith is too personal. No, 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 no. I mean, if you're a believer, your brand should reflect your beliefs. I'm not saying put a cross or be preachy or none of that, none of that. But just being excellent, just exuding excellence in everything you do as for the Lord, that will show other people like, man, there's something different here, right? And I think as believers, I see sometimes complacency, false humility. I see so many things that don't really belong to to the way Jesus showed us how to do these things, right? Because he was the master storyteller, and branding is all about telling beautiful stories, how to communicate the best way possible, you know, the company that you are stewarding. So that,
When you say branding, I love the way that you're quick to tie that to great storytelling, because again, there's this idea in the marketplace, oh, you need a great brand, well, you need a great logo. But you're saying, no, no, that's just such the smallest piece. It
uh,
is important, but the story you're telling, what you're communicating is so much more important.
correct, correct. And there's another thing that I love to talk about this, but I strongly believe with every fiber in my body. By the way, for the people that don't know us, we build, I don't know, we help build over 2,000 brands, you know, all across. There's universities, there's the largest CPAs in Texas. I mean, across the board, just
Name
helping,
brand
with,
chains that we don't talk about on the air.
yeah, yeah, just strategies or, identities, visuals, office environments, whatever. But I always tell my customers, sometimes people come to us and say, you know what? I want the flashy thing. I want the new thing. I want to look like this or like that, right? And in our opinion, God will always bless your true identity.
Hmm.
God will always bless your true identity. And to me, this is fascinating because I think God has a perfect plan for each of us. We were created with intentionality. We were created with a purpose. And so if you have felt the calling of being a steward, of his businesses, right? And you are managing the company, there's a purpose behind it, right? And so if we follow God's plan, we will succeed. We will conquer. Even if the company fails for whatever reason, we will conquer. It will be a success in God's economy, right? So, and I love this because I've seen it over and over in the Bible, like the story of Jacob and Esau, right? When who are you? Well, I'm the deceiver. You know the story, right? And then God rebranded, right? God's like, no, from now on, you'll become Israel, triumphant with God. Okay, so just like that. But in my opinion, it's that when we abide into God, into the natural intentionality that his plan for us and the way we were uniquely built. By the way, this goes for companies and for personal brands as well. So when we follow our authenticity, that's why authenticity is it's so powerful
Hmm.
because God will always bless our true identity. Now, when we express the unique identity, the magic happens because you're, you know, nobody can resist. And I'm talking about a person, I'm talking about a company, right? If you want to talk this in a secular manner, I mean, we have Michelangelo, right? He said, I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free.
Hmm.
And so I mean, we are beautiful. We were created beautiful, magnificent, imago Dei. So we just need to tap into our true identity.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I think as leaders, one of the challenges is not only tapping into our own true identity, but helping our teams
Yeah.
flourish in who they are, recognize their own identity. And
Hmm.
we've historically referred to that concept as culture.
Hmm.
As you and I were preparing for this episode, you used the phrase the spiritual battle of culture. What do you mean by that when you say that?
Yes. So there's a spiritual warfare, right? And I strongly believe that the enemy doesn't want us to flourish as persons, as individuals, and how the human beings, how we grow. We grow when we are abiding into God's purpose and God's perfect plan. Like you're saying, this is really cool. When we are founders of companies and we are the leaders of a company, God has given us a vision for that enterprise. So that vision needs to be communicated to our teams. And it has like a framework. That
Mm.
framework has values that, hey, I have this vision, and the vision God gave me is this. We're called to be fun. We're called to be excellent and have a heart of a teacher and be this, that, right? Let's say four values, right? Well, if you could be a super smart, talented, whatever, but you're super boring and you don't communicate well, and you're breaking a couple of the values of the company, it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It just means that you don't fit into that specific plan, and you better play in another playground, right? So I feel all the time there's a battle because we live in a world that wants us to be distracted all the time, right? Um, I'm going again into the book of Jordan Rayner, Redeeming My Time, and just you know just we're bombarded by all these ideas, all these distractions that kind of want to take us away from God's plan. That's why it's so important the quiet time in the morning, right?
Mm.
So I think all these distractions are ways that the enemy is playing so that we don't fully develop God's plan for the companies and we don't help the people in the companies grow. I think that's one of the most important things of why we're leading a company is to help our people grow. Because think about it, that's one of the most important things for God. Again, in God's perfect plan, He's always talking about how to we can live our best version of ourselves as we follow His plan.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned the word intentionality earlier in the podcast a few times. And really that's a theme throughout this idea of building your brand. I think, we're currently, talking about culture. And I think what's your thoughts on if CEOs aren't intentional about culture, what direction does it tend to go?
Well, culture is super tricky. It's super tricky because what I've seen is that the worst thing that sometimes leaders do is they say, I don't care, I just care about the bottom line. I don't care about people, I don't care about it. When they start doing that and they focus, it's funny because they might get results for a little while, right? But in the long term, it's disaster, right? Because everything about culture is about people. By the way, man, I don't want to go into this, but I can even tell you there are some cultures, there are some ethnicities, countries, religions that if you see it carefully and clearly, they don't care much about people. You know, they just care about living life or profit or whatever. There are some ethnicities, some cultures, they care way more about people
Hmm.
and they flourish, right? So to me, that is really fascinating. To me, culture is caring for people, but in a more profound way. Not like just here are some pizzas and here's the ping pong table and not like that. That's that's not culture. That's just, you know, let's have a good time for a little while. But culture is really like, okay, what do we truly believe in this company? We communicate really, really well with everybody, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and everything in between. Um, and we are living our values on a day to day. We're living our why, our mission, right? We have a very clear North Star. And that's how, with rhythm, you start to build a culture. Now, I have seen extremes, and by the really good cases where there are some companies that, man, they they really care for the people working there, and they put their money where their mouth is, and they treat them extremely well. They have a lot of perks. They have special things, and it's just people flourish. Yeah.
Sergio, that's we've covered some important ground. I'd like to actually kind of pause here and maybe pick up on a part two. Any final thoughts on what we've covered so far?
Just I think if you are if you're a founder, if you're a leader, and you feel the the calling to lead well and build a strong culture, a strong, vibrant culture, just abide in him, abide in his plan. Uh, have quiet time first thing in the day, at least 20 minutes, 30 minutes. That's the bare minimum. If you don't have time and you're in a lot of turmoil and a lot of problems, then do an hour or two. Yeah, that's reality.
Yeah.
But yeah, just continue to try to hear his voice and his will for the company that you're stewarding, and things will eventually be really, really well for you and your team.
Yeah, it's great advice. Sergio, thank you for your time on this particular episode. We'll pick up with part two next week.
Yes, you got it, man.
All
Awesome.
right. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of A Leader's Journey podcast. If you enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up and remember to subscribe to our channel.